I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Jason Aviles, aka Urban Yogi, social entrepreneur, and of course, proud father. Jason Aviles is CEO of Fly Yogi LLC, co-owner of Greenbox Kitchen, project director of Wilmington Greenbox, and co-founder of Artist Ave Station. He is a graduate of the conscious-based institution Maharishi University of Management, and Jason developed an original interdisciplinary course of study in youth development and social change. While attending the university, Jason was introduced to yoga and lost over 60 pounds. After experiencing a profound impact yoga had on his health life and lifestyle, Jason obtained his yoga instructor certification and started teaching. As owner of Fly Yogi, Aviles and his team of yoga instructors specialize in bringing the practice of yoga to schools, corporate environments, and communities, as well as clients looking for meditative assistance in a busy and demanding world. Before teaching yoga, he spent over 7 years professionally teaching and counseling youth in New York and Delaware. Currently, Jason has lost a total of over 100 pounds. Wow. Jason was also named by the Delaware Business Times as one of Delaware's top 40 under 40 achievers and innovators. And he has led several social impact ventures in Wilmington to support the arts and culture under his nonprofit organization, Wilmington Placemakers, Inc., including projects like Wilmington Greenbox that provide at-risk teams with entrepreneurial jobs while supplying urban communities with access to cold-pressed juices, fresh produce, and healthy goods. In 2017, Wilmington Greenbox was chosen as a co-winner of the Reinventing Delaware event held by the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation. Most recently, Jason has launched Greenbox Kitchen, a fast, casual, plant-based restaurant with multiple locations that serves handcrafted fresh foods that are incredibly delicious and always 100% plant-based. Greenbox Kitchen won 2020 Best of Delaware for vegan, vegetarian friendly restaurant, and in 2021 was named by Yelp as the top vegan restaurant in the state of Delaware. Today, Jason is here to share a bit about his journey and how he's been able to leverage Delaware's resources to grow his business. Please welcome Jason Aviles.
Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing? I'm sure I can't probably hear your responses. But it's an absolute pleasure to be here, Stephen. Special thank you to the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation for allowing me to, share my insight and experiences on this platform. I think a huge part about this process is, allowing local entrepreneurs on the ground to get this level of access to express insight and information to people aspiring to be entrepreneurs or already established entrepreneurs. So it's absolutely a blessing to be here with you all today, and really to not just share a little bit of my story, but to offer you value. And I think that's my goal of this conversation. It's to really be of value to you, so that way you can leave this conversation with something that can be able to be applied into your personal and professional circumstance and situation. To give you a little background, born and raised in New York, moved to Delaware in 2007. At the time, I specialized in youth development work. I did everything from behavior counseling to working with youth that were 14 years old, doing 25 years of life in a maximum security youth prison. And after doing that professionally for a little over 8 years, it led me to really seeking an alternative way to help our youth and really just provide them with tools to help them live a greater quality of life. Coming back to Delaware in 2014 with my bachelor's degree, I hit the ground running and launched Fly Yogi, as well as Wilmington Placemakers, which currently is an umbrella nonprofit for programs like Artist Avenue Station and Wilmington Greenbox. And to date, we've launched a fast casual vegan restaurant, which is thriving right now. We have 3 locations, 2 in downtown Wilmington, 1 in Philadelphia. And this year, we're looking to expand our presence of Wilmington Green Box and introduce urban farming. That's not public knowledge yet, so you guys are hearing it first, but we've been able to get some land in North Wilmington, and now we're going to start growing the produce that we're using both at the restaurant and in the kitchen that our teams are occupying to make our bottled cold press juices and other healthy goods. So this year, that's an exciting addition to what we're able to offer out Wilmington Green Box. And we're looking to employ, train, and educate anywhere between 20 to 30 at-risk teens this year for Wilmington Green Box. And 2 years ago, prior to COVID, we employed 15 at-risk teens, all making a minimum of $11 an hour, working on average 30 hours a week for a duration of 7 months. 50% of those teens went on to long-term employment opportunities through the mentorship and support that we provide them with through our program, Wilmington Green Box. So that's a little bit of history and background to, who I am and the type of work that I do. This particular conversation is more so geared towards just really understanding the entrepreneurship ecosystem and tapping into resources that are available. I think now more than ever, as we're hopefully on the tail end of COVID, one of the biggest last year and a half was the type of resources that were made available to, nonprofits and for-profits to help assist them in these trying times. And depending on where, you and your organization was in your situation, there could have been opportunities to tap into this funding, which could have assisted you in this time of need. And I think one of the first things that I wanted to start out by saying is that positioning your organization, yourself, and your for-profit company is key, and taking that proactive measure and just making sure that what you have going on is in place and is documented is of the utmost importance. Because when we first started, getting the grants and looking at everything that was available, it was quite intimidating. And I think that's the reality of it for a lot of new entrepreneurs. It's, how do I go through this grant writing process? How do I apply for these loans? How do I understand my financials and the data that's required to be able to be eligible for a lot of these resources? And for us, this is when we really kind of seeked out help and assistance, and just helping us our organization at that level where we felt that much more confident in applying for the resources that were available. One of the key things that happened to Wilmington Green Box along the way was the exposure and access that we got through the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation. Being selected as one of the co-winners for that Reinventing Delaware event really allowed us to be vetted by industry professionals that were relatable to the work we were doing. And that allowed us to get objective professional feedback on our organization and things that we didn't quite think about that needed improvement. And I think that's a huge part about this process, allowing yourself and the work that you do to be exposed to objective feedback and professionals that can just help assist you in refining your mission, your vision, your operations, your product, your marketing, your branding. And, through that Reinventing Delaware opportunity, we got that type of support. And coming out of that program, we really had a grip on where we wanted to go, what we wanted to be, and just our overall identity. So it's opportunities like that really just help kind of vet you and get you crystal clear on who you are and what you want to be. Because one of the big things coming out of that program that we realized was that, we didn't want to do everything and we didn't want to be everything. We knew that what we were building essentially was a workforce development program. And the vehicle of choice was, filling these voids within food deserts, using cold press juicing and fresh produce and healthy goods. But, essentially at our core, we're a workforce development program. But again, it was that opportunity that allowed us to get that type of feedback. And how we position ourselves to get that opportunity is a critical part about this process too. One of the things about being an entrepreneur is that you have to do your due diligence to find the resources that are available. And believe it or not, this was something I didn't know. I thought for the most part that a lot of this stuff would be evident and it would just be in my face and it would be easily accessible. But what I found is that you have to really kind of sift through the different networks that exist, particularly within the state of Delaware, to find the opportunities that resonate with you and your organization. So I made sure that I found and carved out the time to do that homework, to do that research, and to deliberately seek out opportunities that made sense for us. And that's how we stumbled upon the Reinventing Delaware opportunity. It was through that R&D that we saw that, and then we applied for it. We shot our shot, and we came out as a co-winner, and we had that awesome and great experience. So I think doing your homework and doing your research on your part is huge, and then just make sure that your organization is positioned in a way where it can take advantage of the resource. I think a lot of people initially go into these type of things just looking for the resources, just looking for the assistance, just looking for the help, and not really kind of doing the work that's required to sustain getting the opportunity when that time comes. So as we were looking for these resources, simultaneously, we were doing the work in understanding and achieving that level of clarity of what we were doing. So just in case, if something came through, we knew exactly how to maneuver and position ourselves to leverage the opportunity to work in our benefit. So it's required, whether you get resources or support or assistance, for you to still do the work, for you still to be crystal clear on what you want and what your ask is. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you get the opportunity, to be in front of these people and you're not clear on what you want. And it's not that they can't help you, it's that there's not that clarity there. So there have been opportunities that we've gotten that we fumbled because we just weren't ready, for them. And we just didn't know what we were doing and what our mission and goal was to the standard that the opportunity required. So, being proactive, being prepared, and just spending that time with you and your team on a daily basis, refining your idea concept is invaluable. My approach is, to always be ready, to take a proactive instead of a reactive approach to seeking out help and assistance. And I think after you're doing that preparation, you're doing that research and development, and now, the resources are there and available, I think it's important to get help. There were a lot of things initially starting a nonprofit that we had no idea about, how to find a bookkeeper, how to find the right accounting, how to do our taxes, how to solidify and refine our mission. There were things that we had no idea about because our concern was more so on doing the work on the ground and kind of priding ourselves on that. But getting, into the trenches, we realized that there equally has to be an understanding of the organizational structure and the ecosystem and environment that you're doing business in. that is equally as important as being able to actually do the programming work on the ground. And that was our weakness. So we humbly just reached out to people. And what you'll find is that most people in positions of authority, or who have clout in your industry, they're waiting for organizations to present them with problems, because these people are normally problem solvers. So they're eager about being, mentors. They're eager about assisting you. But again, you just have to approach them correctly. You have to have your due diligence in place, where you're coming to them from a space of already kind of understanding who you are, what you're doing, and having that homework kind of checklist, tasked off. So that's what we did. We reached out, we got help. I seeked out mentors. There are a lot of people, on this call today, who played a big role in part in that. Nudie Felton and Malcolm and Tamara, Tam, the work that they do over at the Wealth League, that type of support system and people played a huge role in us being able to bounce off ideas and just collaborate and build on a local level. Wilminster, you played a big role, early on, when it came to me starting the yoga business on Market Street. On 9th Street, and opening that studio. So I've always kind of played that position of, humbly just putting myself out there and looking for the help, before I need it. I'm always critical about, what I'm doing and what standard that I'm operating at, because for me, Delaware is a launching pad. What you do, what you build, and what you're able to sustain here in Delaware can take you all over the world. So I'm looking at being able to compete on an international level, and you'll be surprised with the talent pool here in Delaware and the people that have traveled the world and done business around the world that can be able to provide you valuable insight and information. You just have to not be scared to ask, and just know that these people are going to expect you to come correct. And in times where we were told no, we took that as fuel, and we transformed that energy into motivation, and we kept going. And I think that's critical. I think that's a huge part of the asking process, is, being able to digest and process the no without taking it personal, because it's business. And I know sometimes those lines blur when you're passionate about what you do, but there were opportunities that we didn't get that we knew we weren't ready for. And we were happy after the fact that we didn't get it, because we knew we would have fumbled, and that would have deteriorated our brand and our reputation as a company. So sometimes you have to understand that the no is really just fuel and motivation to continuing to push forward until you get that yes. And most of the time, it isn't personal. There may be, special cases where there may be some other underlying, issues going on. But, for the most part, you have to understand the language that's being spoken by the other party, and sometimes they're looking at data, they're looking at numbers, they're looking to see if you have a proof of concept, they're looking to see if you've been well vetted and you're connected, within that network and that ecosystem. And all those things are okay. And they're important for you to be able to speak on and know when it comes to your organization, because that's what's expected. At the time that you consciously choose to get into business, you're also choosing to put yourself out there. And sometimes what comes with putting yourself out there is the no's and the yes and the maybe. So we've always just had this mindset that we're going to keep on trucking, because we believe in what we're doing, and we're open to improvement. We're open to refinement. And, now it's been going on 7 years, since Wilmington Green Box was initially created. And we've come so far, and we've been able to make such an incredible impact in our local community. And we've also been able to connect with like-minded individuals that are doing the same amazing work that we're doing and more, which has been an amazing experience, thus far. At this time, I really want to kind of transition the conversation towards, answering your questions and your points, your statements, and even any curiosity that you may have about funding, about tapping into resources, about being an entrepreneur or a small business owner or running a nonprofit. At this point, I just want to be of value and service to you. So please,
Jason, can I chime in? So
yeah, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, so obviously we've we're close. I've been watching your progression, and I really wanted to ask you personally as an entrepreneur, as things were moving along swiftly and briskly, and then COVID hit, right? How did COVID impact your business, and how have you been able to overcome? Because now you're expanding, you're in Philadelphia. You've just recently opened Deco. Talk a little bit about the COVID impact to your company.
Well, let's talk numbers first, right? 73% of locally and independently owned restaurants in the city of Philadelphia have closed down. Over 55% of restaurants independently owned nationwide have closed down. We're in the restaurant and food business. I remember being in my house with a newborn and hearing the news that grocery stores were shutting down and that we couldn't go back to work and that we had to close the restaurant. And to be quite honest, man, I was scared. I didn't know what was on the other side of that. Hugely because entrepreneurship is my bread and butter. It's all I do, and it's all I know how to do at this point. And I had no other, financial means in play or any other resources in play to help support me, through this time where we had to make that tough decision to close our doors. So, initially we were scared and caught off guard like everybody else. And then after getting through that and just processing all the emotions that came with that initial kind of impact, hearing what was going on in the world, we realized that we had to pivot. And I think that's a huge part about being an entrepreneur. It's having the ability to be flexible and pivot and adapt in real time. And sometimes the hardest thing is getting out of your own way and not being stubborn and really doing what the situation and circumstance is calling for. So for an example, for us, running a restaurant and choosing to open our doors, after that initial kind of COVID period happened, it was a matter of us looking at every single ingredient and menu item and consciously curating an environment and a menu that made sense in that time. Because, a lot of things that were happening pre-COVID now couldn't happen, during COVID. Everything from tapping into local vendors and understanding their schedule and deliveries and certain types of food groups not being made available because certain vendors going out of business or going out of the state. So we had to realize that in real time, there were changes we had to make to survive that could perhaps lead us to thriving. And that was our biggest asset then, and it's our biggest asset now. It's being able to act and pivot and adapt in real time to the situation and circumstance at hand, and not being afraid to make changes and have things look different. because our restaurant, we were operating pre-COVID 6 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And now we're on Market Street, 3 days a week with at half that time, and Deco now is 5 days a week. But we had to be okay with that. We had to tell ourselves that it was okay for things to look like this, because being in business now more than ever has to make sense. So we can't just lead, with the heart and with passion. We equally have to understand and double down on the numbers, because right now, doing business, you don't have the luxury to kind of dump and drain cash. Everything has to be intentional. Everything has to be strategic. Everything has to be thought out, and everything has to make sense. So that's how we were able to overcome that. And then on the flip side, because we were able to really just be smart about how we were moving, we were able to grow. And that's what you'll see usually in these trying times. Amazon, Google, these huge companies usually experience their highest growth spurts during times where, the industry was collapsing, and that's because they were proactive in adapting their concept to meet the new consumers' needs. And that's what we've been able to do. And that's what we continue to try to do to stay afloat and to continue to thrive.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone
No
else?
problem.
Any questions?
Jason, it's Pierre Dupont. Pleasure
Hey, Pierre.
to meet you and to hear your story. Very, very compelling. I got to say, you're very articulate, and you present a very powerful statement about what you've been doing. And really what I liked, of course, and I guess the reason you're here in part was to talk about how the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation has been helpful to you. You made a statement, the one I wrote down, objective professional feedback on things that you hadn't really thought about, something to that effect. In general, would you have any suggestions for how we as an organization might get our message out a little further to people who want to hear it, much as you have? I guess those are basic marketing suggestions. I don't know, but how would we get our message out a little further to bring in more people to apply and try to be in our fold, so to speak?
Yeah, I think what you're doing here in and of itself is a huge step forward. Because you're leveraging the equity and the social capital that's already in the entrepreneurship ecosystem by extending your platform to people on the ground that's relatable and accessible to the entrepreneurs within the city. And I think that's a huge way to do it. I think there has to be more collaboration. When I look at high-level performing brands across the world, one of the common denominators that I'm seeing is collaboration. Collaboration. And I think what we're finding now more than ever is that less is more. And what I mean by that is, I may not have all the answers. I may not understand everything, but through collaboration, I can be invited into a new territory with a helping hand to get that exposure that may diversify my brand and my approach to doing business. And I think that's how we have to think as a state. We have to start thinking forward in the sense of how can we intentionally curate collaborations and build relationships with people that can allow us to cover more ground, diversify our approach, and really tap into the richness that the people here in the state of Delaware have to offer. And I'm a huge fan of that. I think we can do so much more through cross-pollination than isolation. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious that if we let our guard down a bit and we're open to change and transition, that through collaboration, we can do so much more. There's always going to be that ceiling that each of us on our own are going to reach, but there's a way of kind of breaching that ceiling through collaboration that I'm learning from direct experience. and through observation in the world, in the way in which businesses are just so much more open and inviting towards feedback and diversity.
I mean, I think you're making a point that plays well to kind of where I come from of the collaboration point, is that it's certainly it's about the professional guidance that PDFF can bring and help and so on, but it's about the community of everyone else working together. And so maybe Stephen and Stephanie and the rest of us need to think of more ways in which we can just get applicants, so to speak, get the companies together. The executives of the company together, because that's when they have the opportunity to collaborate to find, and so yeah, more of that would make a lot of sense. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Good point.
Yeah, and I'll make this quick point. Real quick, I remember I was counseling in a maximum security youth prison, and I remember my first day on the job. I was scared for my life, working in this environment. And I started thinking to myself, like, how could I be accepted and embraced by these kids? Because I knew that my survival depended on these relationships that I could build with these kids, right? And there's a quote in the Vedic tradition that says, seek the highest first. And I chose to build a very strong rapport and relationship with the guy that was respected by all the other kids. And through that relationship, I got access and tapped into just about every kid on my unit. And immediately, they just embraced and respected me entirely different through that one relationship that I built. And I knew if I stayed on my own island, it would never work, So I had to humble myself and really just be of service. And through that simple relationship and collaboration, I was able to tap into a culture that I was new to. And I think that's okay to say too sometimes. It's like, I'm new to this culture. Like, I don't know what's hip and trend here. Educate me, tell me, show me how things are ran, how things are operating here. And in most cases, if your approach is in that way, on the other side of that, it's just covering more ground and making your life easier at the same time. Yeah, I thought I'd share that point.
Thank you.
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Great nugget. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? I have one if nobody else chimes in.
I have a question.
All right.
Yeah.
Jason, I wanted to ask you, at some point, like you said, you didn't know what you were doing and you shared some of your weaknesses, but then there was the transition period when you were up and operating. How did you go about knowing how to do whatever your dream was? Like, something motivated you to say, this is what I live for, this is what I'm going to do, so you're good at that. How did you go about getting the help you needed to actually operate these businesses?
At first, being very stubborn, as I am as a Taurus, initially I did everything myself, and I told myself if I couldn't get the help or afford the help, it would be wise if I taught myself. And initially that was my approach. And of course, as always, I hit that glass ceiling. And at that point, that's when I realized that I needed a team. Now more than ever, especially because I have a daughter, I understand that less is more. And what I mean by that is that, I don't have to be the end all be all to everything that I do. I can be passionate about it. I can love it. It can come through me. But it doesn't mean that I have to be the sole proprietor of it. And I'm so much more open now to just sharing our struggles and our hurdles as an organization with my team and finding new team members. And I think that's the easiest way out of that rut. It's to lean on other people. And that has dramatically changed everything I do and just my overall health in life. Because now I've formed these relationships with my team members over years where they've improved my quality of life because I'm not doing as much as I thought I had to do because I learned to trust and rely them. So my approach to doing business now is, I won't do anything or launch a product or start an organization without a team. I just won't. At this point, I just refuse to, because I'm really exercising my ability to oversee, delegate, and manage, instead of just being the guy, on the ground, pushing the cart and hustling the juices. And I think a bit of maturity, of course, has happened that allows me to be more accepting to this way of doing business and just living life, in general.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question about sort of your philosophical approach to business, right? What are some of the most important reads that you've had, or some of the most or some of the businesses that you admire and you've been able to kind of model your approach after?
Yeah, one really good book is the E-Myth. I forgot the author. I think his name is Robert. If someone knows the author of the E-Myth, write it into the chat. The E-Myth was critical because what it does is it kind of breaks down these different archetypes, and it allows you to kind of pick an archetype that you resonate with, which really just identifies your strengths and weaknesses. So you can find other archetypes that support that, so you can be able to attack whole problems that much more efficiently and effectively. Michael Gerber. Yes, thank you, Renata. Yes, Michael Gerber, the E-Myth. Great book. One of the companies right now that I've been studying, there's a company called Homeboy Industries out on the West Coast in California that's ran by a guy named Father Mahia. And he's built this organization where he has taken convicted felons that have just come out of prison and placed them in a home environment and setting with compassionate care and wraparound services to launch these different cafes and restaurants. And the reason why I'm studying what he's doing is because he's made social entrepreneurship for me a norm and a standard of how we should be doing business, period. And I think now more than ever, humanity is understanding that it can't just be about profit and capital. It equally has to be about people. And I really feel like the underlying cause and effect of my success is that I've always led with the people being in mind, and just the overall care and effect that my products and services were going to have on the people. And that is what allowed us to have and retain our customer and client base for our restaurant. Like, we would not have the business we're doing right now if I didn't spend that time and energy during COVID answering every DM, every email, talking to every customer. And what we saw was that these are the same customers that were so excited about us opening just so they could support to see us, make it through. And it all was because of those relationships. And I think people, they know when you care. They can feel it when you care, and that will stand the test of time. That culture is the intrinsic value that successful companies and organizations just have, and you can feel it, and it just works every single time. It's not to say that you're not gonna fall down, or fail or experience hurdles or obstacles. It's just that through tweaking and refinement and just being open to not being right, all the time. If you lead with the people in mind and just the care for people in mind, you'll always make it through. So I'm really heavy into researching, organizations and companies that operate from that space, because I really do think that's the underlying magic. That's the it factor that just transcends profit and capital to tapping into, you know, the minds and hearts of the people in a very refined, intentional way.
So I know we're kind of coming up on time a little bit. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I could throw in a kind of statement and question. This is Will Minster.
Yep.
Jason, yeah, thanks for the mention earlier, but you have to understand that what I got from you was equally as much as I gave to you. And you know, it's one of my proudest moments was being able to fund a manual. You know, your first you know, entrepreneur, you know, in residence.
Yes.
But I think, you know, there's a difference in how your business is as opposed to a lot of others. And, you know, now at the Launcher program, you're a social entrepreneur. You give as much to the community as you take from the community in revenues. And I think that's one really super important because you're real, you know, to your consumers, to, you know, people in the community, you're real and you are making an impact. And I think how you can spread that. And for people like myself and others in organizations, I think one of our challenges sometimes is understanding what we need to do to truly make an impact in, you know, the communities that we serve. And I think, you know, that's something that, you know, going forward, you can speak to very well. There's others who, you know, who can do the same thing. And, you know, I think even like someone else mentioned in here about, you know, networking and so forth. But I think being able to have strong leaders, strong speakers like yourself, who can, in a lot of ways, communicate in multi-language, you know, because you could walk into a boardroom and you could wow us. You could also walk in with a group of people in an impoverished community and you can wow them. And I think that's a really great asset to have. But no, I thank you. And it's been great following you. And I know you're going to be even more successful.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. You know, and sometimes I've struggled a bit, you know, getting into the boardroom. And when I am, you know, that's when I tap on your shoulder, you know, and I'm
Thank
like,
you.
you know, walk me in, you know, and I'm like, Renata, like send the email, like Steven, like set up the meeting with there. Like, so at times when I've been the most uncomfortable, I've had to understand that, you know, on the other side of that is there's this opportunity for expansion and connectivity, you know, being able to connect with people that don't look like me, don't sound like me, don't dress like me. And what that has done is allow me to be, you know, well-versed and bilingual and in my approach and in the language I speak through doing business. And I think that's a great point. It's like, sometimes, you know, we're so scared of what we don't understand that we just further distance ourselves from it, when really what we need to do is get close up to it, as close as possible. And it's not to say that it's easy work, you know, because even for myself, when I go back home to the Bronx, or, you know, when I drive Emmanuel home after juicing, you know, there's still a bit of that shock value for me and what that environment is and what it feels like. But it's through them and their permission that I go into it with compassion and listening ears and just a willingness to build that relationship. And to be honest, like, it takes time. It takes years sometimes to just destroy these barriers and build those connections. But like, we have to start with the willingness to do that. That's where, as long as the intention is to begin that process, then we'll remove those barriers. We'll totally remove that gap, and we'll be able to integrate. And that's what this city needs. It just needs a very intentional approach to integration. And what you'll find is that what you don't have, somebody else does. And oftentimes that person may not be exactly who you are, or even speak your language, but it's through the relationship that you can kind of get that access and tap into the possibility and the potential that can come out of that. And that's how I move. That's how I navigate. You know, if I don't know, if I feel uncomfortable about something, I try to tap into the people who I do trust and really just kind of ride their coattail in. And I've done this in many other circumstances and situations in my life, literally. But now I've been able to apply it to the way in which I do business, and I think that we're starting to actually build some momentum and some traction here, and we're getting back to just like the essence of just being good people and being concerned about real world problems and issues that we need to give our attention and energy to. And I'm just happy to be a part of that process and to be walking this path and setting that example and role model for, you know, the people coming behind me and the kids that I work with, because that's critical, because they're always watching. You know, you brought up a good point, you know, DuPont, Pierre, of you know, setting that example, because that's where it's at. If they don't see us collaborating and working together, they're not going to think it's possible, you know. So we have to model it. We have to show and demonstrate that first, and then I think they'll start to become more and more curious about it being an actual possibility. So, you know, it's up to us, and it's up to the people above us to all be on the same type time and page and really just work towards the same goal. Because if we do, everyone's going to eat. Everyone's going to win. Like, that's the one thing I've learned about exploring the world. There's enough for everybody. Mm-hmm. Every single last one of us. There's enough for. We just have to lead. We have to lead with abundance and not scarcity. And I think we'll tap into something rich.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, one last question before we wrap up. For all those entrepreneurs out there that are going to watch this, that are here today, what is one piece of advice that you would give, or something that you wish somebody would have told you before you started on your journey?
I think now, with where I am in my life, I think that you know, you're not in it by yourself. Sometimes we as artists, we as entrepreneurs, we as small business owners can isolate ourselves in mind and in body, because this journey just comes with so many pitfalls, right? That we distance and remove ourselves from getting the help that we need and support that we need. So now more than ever, I'm just open to that idea and concept that, you know, I'm not in it by myself, and that the real work is just building up the trust within myself to learn how to lean on others that I trust and know I can rely and depend on. So, you know, you're not in it by yourself. You know, don't believe that. And, you know, seek out the help when you need it, and it'll only make your life easier and your impact stronger.
Great words. Great words. Thank you, Jason, so much for joining us today for our
Thank you, man.
free lunch and learn. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being a part of the entrepreneurial community and being, you know, a mentor to all of our entrepreneurs as we learn from you, and hopefully you learn from us. And
absolutely,
we ask everybody to keep the Pete DuPont Freedom Foundation in the forefront. We'll be having more of these E3 lunch and learns in conjunction with Wilmington Alliance. And as we continue to grow the program, stay tuned. Be sure to follow us on our social media channels, as well as be on the lookout for our new redesigned website launch next week, and we'll have more information
Nice.
as we continue to grow E3. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jason. Keep rocking.
Thank you. See you guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Terrific, Jason. Thanks.
Thank you.